Boom, boom, Mr. Kid, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. So, we've got a little bit of anime reviews up today. Now, I remember I said I was going to be doing some anime reviews in the future, so this is going to be the first one. And the first series I'm going to be focusing on is Mushoku Tensei. Now, Mushoku Tensei is an anime that is just coming out in the winter season here. So, it just came out. I think there's only 2 or 3 episodes out at this point. But what you need to realize about this anime is the fact that this is actually based on a Japanese web novel, one of the most popular Japanese web novels ever, and it's been out for a long time. So, the isekai anime. Isekai is the anime where reincarnation, transported to another world type anime. It's called isekai anime. So this is actually one of the first isekai type situations that you've got, and it was in this Japanese web novel, and it was #1. I'm serious, it was #1 for months and months and months. This web novel was. So they're just now converting it over into anime. So this is actually the basis for all your Log Horizons, your Wise Man's Grandsons, Shield Hero, Alpharetta. All of those animes really have their basis in this web novel, and this is what this anime is based on. It's Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. Okay, so this is the first episode of that. Episode 1, Jobless Reincarnation. Get serious about living. Now, first thing you need to realize is when the anime starts out, the first image we get is him. He's in pretty bad condition. He's laying on the ground. Okay. We come to find out that he's been hit by a truck. Okay, so he's in pretty bad shape. Okay, we hear some voices in the background from the police. Unidentified male, overweight, mid-30s, unconscious and in critical condition. Okay. We also hear that 2 high school students have been hit as well, and they're currently missing. So you'll see the police walking around looking to find the girls and see what happened. We'll see one of the other individuals. There have actually been 3 high school students involved. One of the other is currently sitting in the back of the ambulance with oxygen, so he's just apparently a little bit of a shock. So this truck accident must have been pretty nasty. We did not actually see that happen. Okay, it just opens up with him on the ground, bloodied and dying, and that's where it starts off. Okay, so you have to do it. We also learned that he's a recluse. It has been for the last 20 years. We don't know why or at what. So we begin a bit more about him. So he's been a recluse for 20 years. He had to beg on floor for his food. So a little weird. Anyway, they transport him to the hospital and he dies. The screen goes completely dark. And then all of a sudden there's this white light that shines in the center and expands out. And all of a sudden he's, this whole time he's mumbling to himself because you can't hear him because he's unconscious. He died. He'd been mumbling himself, and he's not like all of a sudden, he's everything he thought. He said, I died. Why? What's going on now? So, he doesn't realize at first what's happening. He comes out in this blight, and then he sees these 2 people here. He sees this guy, and staring at him, and the guy just reaches down, and picks him up. And remember, he's an overweight. He thinks he's an overweight 30-year-old male. So he's like, the guy just lifted him up like he was nothing. He doesn't realize what's going on yet. This turns out this is Paul, his father. You'll learn later. And then of course he sees the woman, the beautiful woman. He's blushing. He's talking how she's blushing, and she's beautiful. He thinks she's extremely beautiful. And she's blushing at him, and he's like, "Who is it? What's she blushing for?" And then he thinks to himself, well, he sees her boobies. He's like, well, if she's going to leave her shirt open like that, he's going to cop a feel. So he reaches out with his hands, and of course he sees his hands, and that's right, they're tiny. So then it begins to dawn on him that he has in fact a baby, and that he has been reincarnated. So so now he's realizing what's happened. He's like, oh my gosh, I've been reincarnated and I'm a baby. So it's like, a little bit of astonishment here, and he transposes. So turns out his name is Rudius, short for Rudy. You'll hear his parents calling him Paul, and his mother's name is Zenith. You'll hear them calling him Rudy throughout the first episode because he's a child and he's running around all over the place. They're trying to find him because he gets misplaced. So basically, you'll hear him yelling for Rudy. Okay. You also hear some expositions about how it was cool to actually suck on a woman's breast, but of course it didn't turn him on because it's his mom. So so as you can see, the recluse, shut-in type of perverted that he was has carried over. Okay, all that has carried over, and that's going to have to be dealt with, even though he's been reincarnated. Just he's going to get another chance to do it. Okay, so that's why they're saying jobless reincarnation. Okay, because he didn't have a job and now he's been reincarnated. Okay, so jobless reincarnation, that's where it comes from. Now, as he begins to get a little bit older, after 6 months, he begins to be able to get an understanding of the language. So it just takes a little while. I mean, as normally would a baby. And as he gets a little bit older, we start to see this, as I said, the tendencies that he has to mess with people. In this case here, he's pulled a pair of underwear from the hamper and stuck it over his head, and now he's crawling through the house with it on. And Lily, this is the perspective from Lilia, the maid that works for them. She's looking at him right now. She sees him with the underwear with that, perverted type look on her face. So she's a little weary of him as to what maybe he's not right because he's just a baby doing this. So it is pretty funny. I'm serious, it's hilarious. This whole first episode is lighthearted. It's just an amazing anime. They did an excellent job writing it. So as he begins to get older, he finally learns to stand up to the point, and he climbs up on this stool. Okay, and he looks out and he thinks he's in Europe. Okay, now remember at this point he just knows he's a baby that was reincarnated. He doesn't know anything, and he thinks he didn't understand the language, but he doesn't. So he's thinking maybe he's like in Europe because he's seen pictures in his previous life, and these pictures probably showed some rural place in Europe or something like that. So that's where he thinks he's at. So anyway, he glances down to the side and he sees that his father is swinging a sword, and this startles him. He falls off of the chair, the little stool that he's standing on, looking out the window, and bumps his head. He starts to cry. His mother comes rushing over, and she picks him up and soothes him, and she sits him down on the table, and then she starts to chant and hold her hand over his head. And he's like, "What are you doing?" He said, "Is this like some rural type, backwoodsy, sayings to make your kid feel better?" And then he realizes that she's casting magic as he feels the bump on his head soothe and heal, and he's like, "It's all gone," And that's when he realizes, "Uh-oh, this is magic. Okay, this can't be Earth." And then they cut to the image of in the air, and they show that these animals, which are clearly not animals that you find on Earth. So this is when he realizes that he is actually on another planet, not just Earth. Okay, so he's been died, reincarnated as a baby on another planet, but he's happy because this planet has magic. So he's extremely, wants to learn magic big time. So it's basically, he learns to walk. Okay, he starts snooping around the house because if he's going to do magic, he's going to need to learn how to do it. So he's snooping around the house, and he managed to come across this chest, which he manages to force open and climb down inside, and he finds some books down inside the chest. I think there was like 3 or 4 books in there, just a few. And he picks up the book and he takes it out, but of course he doesn't know how to read. So he says first he's going to have to learn how to read. Okay, so basically, it takes about a year or so, and his father helps him by reading to him and stuff, and he, for the most part, learns how to read so that he can start looking at the books. And the books, they talk about, sorry, I keep losing track of there. They talk about the actual, how your magic power, it's set at birth. And he's, thinking that, maybe I can't do magic at all. Maybe it's just not his genes don't have it. So but he stands up and he reads the incantation that's in the book. Remember, all magic needs an incantation, we think. At least that's what the book says. Well, he starts chanting the incantation, and his magic circuits activate, and he is able to cast a spell. It is rather weak, okay? It's water. It's the water bullet, but it just drops to the ground. It does not shoot forward. So he's like, well, he knows, he's happy that he knows magic, but of course that was pretty weak. So he begins to, to surmise that maybe, if you practice and practice and practice your magic, that even, the magic, he has the magic capability. Maybe he can get stronger as he practices. So he practices and practices. I mean, you really can't tell how long it takes, but I would say, based on his size and stuff, I would say I was probably several years of just him practicing, until finally one day he actually gets the water bullet to actually fly away from his hand instead of falling to the ground. And that's when he realizes he's got it. And he realizes that the reason he had been focusing on why it wasn't, shooting forward from his hand when he actually did it. So he realized that there's a process. You need to visualize the formation of the spell, but you also need to set the attack and firing speed. So he wasn't doing that before. So since he wasn't setting the firing speed, it wasn't actually firing anywhere. Since that part of the process wasn't being focused on and initiated, it was just dropping off of his hand. So now that he's got the process down, he's able to, get that. So he decides to go ahead and try intermediate magic, since he's now being able to cast a spell. So he starts reading the book. He picks up the book over to the window, starts running the incantation that's needed to launch it. So now things spin out of control very fast here. As he starts to chant it, it realizes that this is going to be, as you can see, it's getting much, 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 much larger than he was expecting. It's, literally bigger than him, the water blast, the bullet that he's about to fire. And he launches it, and it shatters. It blasts right through the house and zooms off into the distance, casting rain droplets down on people in the village as it passed over. And as you can see, he's left a pretty big hole in the house. Well, this, of course, causes everybody to come running. Okay, so everybody's like, what the heck happened? And his mom sees the book lying on the floor, and it's open. So she flips over the book and looks at it, and she sees that it was an intermediate spell that he was casting. She's like, Rudy, did you actually read this out loud? Now, Rudy's a little ashamed at first and scared, because he's not exactly sure if what he did was wrong. He didn't like maybe kids who use magic are dangerous, and it gets sent off to an exposition, as he says here. So he's a little scared, but he finally does cop to it. And instead of his mom being upset, his mom is literally overjoyed. She's jumping up and down, because he's a genius. Kids this young don't cast intermediate magic, and here her boy was. So she's like, yeah, my boy's a genius. My boy's a genius, jumping up and down. The father's like, wow, this is intermediate. So he's freaking out. And then she immediately says she wants to hire a magic tutor. Now, this causes a little bit of a problem here, okay? Now, apparently that they had agreed that if it was a boy, he would be a swordsman, and I guess if it was a girl, he'd be a magic user. Well, so father's not really happy that, he's this good at magic, but they ended up agreeing to, with Lily, the maid's help, that they'll go ahead and teach him magic in the morning and swordsmanship in the afternoon, so they can both do it. Okay, so they're good. So they do hire a magic tutor. Now, it turns out that his father, Paul, is a knight in charge of this village. So they're actually, well off. He's got a little bit of coinage, so they're able to afford to hire a tutor. And they do, and they get one rather quickly, surprisingly. And as you can see, it's Roxy McGurdy. Now, the parents as well as Rudy were a little bit surprised. They were expecting, somebody that screamed mage, a short, pudgy guy, or a tall, pudgy, with a robe, a bushy beard, long hair. That's what they were expecting. So they're really surprised when it's this short little girl who is the tutor to come. And Rudy complies, oh, she's tiny. And she replies back, well, she says, you're not so big yourself. So as you can see, they're going to have an interesting relationship. But they say you're going to be teaching Rudy, and they're like, oh, she's like, oh, come on, idiot parents who think their kids has talent just because he's not. She's actually saying this out loud. So as you can see, she's not too impressed. So, but anyway, they do decide to go ahead, and she will teach him. Now, she says that they want to get teaching. Now, here's where that, You remember when I told you that he was a shut-in? So, they're going to have to train the magic outside. You can't do it in the house because of the damage it will cause. So they're going to have to do it outside. So he's a little apprehensive about this, and this is why. Just so you understand this scene right here, because, we're doing it outside, and he hugs his father. It's like he's really not comfortable doing that. But he does it, and they go out, and they begin to start to train. Now, she starts to talk to him about the magic. There's three types: there's attack magic, healing magic, and summoning magic. And there's 7 ranks: beginner, intermediate, advanced, sacred, royal, imperial, and divine. Now remember, that little water bullet that they did was beginner. Intermediate was that huge water ball that blasted a hole in the side of the house. So that's just intermediate. Could you imagine what advanced, sacred, royal, imperial, and divine is going to be doing? I mean, serious. So there's going to be some serious damage. But so that's all. We've only seen beginner and intermediate, and we've only seen attack so far. But we'll get to see something else here shortly. So Roxy, go ahead, and as you can see, he's extremely uncomfortable, as I said before, but he's listening. Now Roxy starts to chant. Now she's starting to chant. Rudy says, "Do you need the chant?" Because and she says, "Of course you do." And he's like, "Oh, okay. So what I'm doing is a little unusual, okay?" But anyway, she chants and casts a spell, and it slashes this tree in 2. So she's, that's pretty good. Unfortunately, this tree happens to be his mom's tree, and Rudy says, "My mom's going to be extremely upset with you that you did this." So she runs over, and now she's using healing magic, as you can see. She offers the strength to rise again. That's what the healing magic does. And she's able to fully heal the tree right back to just like it was. So as you can see, it's fully healed, back with its blossoms and everything. Okay, so now what happens next is a little bit weird, okay? So here's what happens. Let me explain to you what happens here so you can try to get the gist. Okay, so she says, "You do it." So Rudy starts the chant because he didn't want to do it no chant because that's not supposed to be the way it's done apparently. So he starts the chant, but as he starts the chant, the wind lifts up her skirt, so he sees her underwear. This freaks him out and causes him to launch the water bullet before he finishes the chant. And she's like super surprised because she's like, he just fired off the magic, and he didn't have to chant. She's like, "Do you always abridge your chants like that? You always shorten them?" And as you saw on the previous screen, he's like, "Well, I usually just skip it all together." And then she's like, "Okay." She now knows that he's definitely going to be somebody worth training, because apparently no chant in spellcasting is like unheard of. So she knows she's got a winner on her hands this time. So she's really happy about that. So it looks like so anyway, it turns out that Rudy's water bullet just destroyed his mom's tree again. However, it hadn't been seen the last time. However, Mom just happened to be there this time. So, and she yells at Rudy, like, "Rudy, don't use my trees as test subjects." So she thinks she's going to get fired. So she, but it's nothing because her mom runs over, heals the tree. His mom's a mage, so it's no big deal. So, water under the bridge. So she comes up and he says, "Let's start by introducing ourselves." She can see that they're not upset with her. And she begins to realize that they're really nice people. And they invite her into the house, and they have a welcome party for her and everything. And everybody's having a party, and it's really nice. And then it cuts out to Rudy, and he's sitting in a chair, and he's thinking, he's realizing that, I can get a do-over on life, okay? And he's going to get serious about living. This time he's going to try to make it different than his other life was. He's going to try to make this a better life for himself. So that's the mindset that he's in, and I think that's good. I think it's going to help him throughout the rest of the series. But yeah, so that's where it ends. So Mushoku Tensei Jobless. So it's really interesting, guys. I mean, it's funny, lighthearted. You get to see some really nice magic casting and stuff, and the voiceover he does, as in the first 3 courses, it's just amazing because he can't talk, so he's like, you can see what he's thinking in his mind, and understand he's still a 30-something-year-old guy, being put into position. So he's got all this stuff running around in his head, but so he's trying to grasp it and come up with it. So there's a lot of voiceover in this one. That I assume that'll change in the future episodes now that he can talk. But yeah, but it was hilarious. I'm serious. I was cracking up. But yeah, so this I think you might want to give it a try. But it's called Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation, and it just started this winter, so there's only a few episodes out. But if you do, I would suggest to check it out. First rate, first episode was excellent, and it's definitely something I would approve of you watching. All right, so this has been my first one, and I'm going to do the second episode is out, and I'm going to go ahead and be doing that one. You should see that up shortly. So go ahead and give me some feedback in the comment section as to whether or not you did a good job. This is the first one, so I'll be getting better at it as I go along, with the script and stuff here. So try to get everything working out, use the video editor and stuff. Took a little bit of time. I had to get a little bit more experience in that. So this is the first shot, so things will be better. But I hope you liked it, and I do suggest watching the anime. All right, so this is thanks a lot for watching the video. Remember, go ahead and put a like, and you can share, of course, if you want to. That will help the channel as well. You can also jump by the Patreon page, which will be in the description link below. All right, so thanks a lot for watching. This is Ken Rear. I'm still coming at you from the corner, signing out.